Good morning, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to hop on today's webinar, which we will be exploring the ICHRA concept, the alternative to group, the other group, the creative solution that you can look to offer your clients and or your referral partners this busy selling season. So my name is Thomas Purcell. I'm the VP of our Health Plan Options department here at URL. Our Health Plan Options department here at URL oversees the ACA markets, the under 65 markets, and the ancillary products, group, commercial group benefits, health and ancillary, and ICHRAs. And ICHRAs has been a very hot topic item lately. So we wanted to dedicate some time in a webinar that will be recorded that you can reference back to when these topics or conversations come up with your clients or prospects. URL for those, it looks like we do have some new names. Wow, a lot of attendees. That's awesome. So for anyone that's not familiar with URL, we're an independent general agency or FMO, depending on what line you're specializing in. We do Medicare, we do life and fixed annuities, everything I talked about in our health plan options department as well. Started in 1986, white glove, regional boutique, general agency, second generation family owned and operated. I've been at URL for 10 years. I've been doing employee benefits for 10 years, and I could nerd out on insurance all day. That's a little bit about me, our department, URL as a whole. So I think that takes care of introductions, right? Moving on. So getting into the agenda, I'll talk about what an ICHRA is, how it works, the benefits to the employer and employee. I'm going to be very transparent in this conversation. I am not all in on ICHRAs. I'm going to provide the good, the bad, and the ugly on ICHRAs because all of those things, all of those components do exist with an ICHRA. It's not a perfect system or alternative, and I'll be extremely transparent in that regard. And then we can open it up for questions at the end. Just some house cleaning items. On the right side of your screen, you should see a couple options. First one would be a chat, then a Q&A, then polls, then handouts. You can toggle those options. Feel free to type your questions into the Q&A box, and I can address those at the end. I did carve out an hour, so we should have plenty of time at the end to address questions. I also included some poll questions. If you don't mind, let me start those up a while. If you don't mind answering some of those questions for me, that would be fantastic, just to get a little better idea on the markets all of our attendees are working in, or at least focusing on. So let's get right into it. Yeah, what's an ICHRA? So an ICHRA, they were created way back in 2019. I would say didn't gain popularity or extreme popularity until about 2 years ago now. 2026 will be the third year now. They were created as a way for businesses to use a tax advantage account to reimburse employees for the cost of their premium. Similar to how they do now with group plans, this was just an individual mechanism in which they were able to do that. I keep saying it's an alternative to group health, but ICHRAs are considered a group health plan. They are an ERISA plan, so it is considered group health. They are subject to those requirements and guidelines as well. But one of the cool benefits, there's a lot of cool things ICHRAs can do. Comparatively to group plans, but you can actually offer an ICHRA alongside of a group health plan. So say you're going into a large business and we might have a couple satellite offices, but we have, field workers and remote and in-office workers. We can class out an ICHRA to, which I'll get into the classing you can and cannot do here shortly, but you'll be able to class out employees and offer a group health plan alongside an ICHRA as long as you're doing it compliantly. And what that would look like is you can't offer the ICHRA and the group plan to the same class of employees, but you can offer the group health plan and the ICHRA alongside each other. just offering it to separate classes. So this became popular. Why did it become popular? Because group health renewals just keep getting uglier and uglier every year, right? We're working through our high mark renewals now. I haven't seen many January renewals that aren't double digit increases. So ICHRA's been gaining steam the last 2-3 years. It's going to continue to gain steam, especially if stop loss and the group health markets continue as the way they have been in the past. So I like to talk about primary use cases. All right, if I'm an agent and I'm out there prospecting, meeting with clients, how can I identify the opportunities? Well, I talked about the double-digit renewal increases, right? Like if you have a group that just keeps getting pounded on their renewal, might be a good option. A group that has high turnover. So think like restaurants, for example, where they're hiring and firing often. There's not as much administration that goes into an ICHRA if you can set it up the right way, comparatively to a group plan. So ease of administration there with high turnover groups. Philosophical alignment. I talk about this a lot with my team. It really comes down to what the philosophical beliefs and like the business approach is to employee benefits for that company as a whole. If we are taking a very paternal or maternal approach as a business owner or executives at that company where we feel we are in the driver's seat of making decisions for employees' network and benefits and cost and being very involved in that decision-making process, then the ICHRA is probably not the best fit for that type of philosophical alignment. The philosophical alignment would be businesses that really want to maybe have employees have more skin in the game, be in the driver's seat more of what their health insurance look like, and provide a financial benefit. This a lot of people out there talking about ICHRAs will compare it to a 401k plan. A business offers a 401k, they're providing a financial stipend. They'll match or offer a couple points towards the retirement funds, and then the employees get to pick and choose where that money goes in which retirement funds. That's essentially how an ICHRA is working. The business provides a financial stipend. The employees get to go out and pick and choose how they spend that money. Applicable large employers that have minimum contribution requirements is another really good one. A lot of home care groups, a lot of restaurants, businesses that are just trying to offer the minimum requirements put in place by the IRS and DOL. And ICHRAs can be a good solution for checking that box. So how does it work? So we're going to talk in two parallels here, right? First, we'll start with how it works for the employer. The employer is hopefully going to work with an independent broker, such as URL or yourself on this call today, to aggregate the different ICHRA options available out there. You're going to look at different ICHRA vendors to be able to present to that employer. So the first thing the employer needs to do is decide on what ICHRA vendor and the contributions in which they're going to contribute to employees' premiums. The vendors, there's a ton out there. I'll get to that slide as well. But really what the ICHRA vendors are doing are two main things. They're providing the technology and software in which employees go to enroll in the ICHRA, and also the billing mechanisms on the back end. And I don't want to pretend like those aren't very important features, but essentially that's what all of these different ICHRA vendors are doing. It's very important, but it's two main things. It's the software, it's the benefit administration system in which the employees go to enroll in the ICHRA, and it's the billing processing and the billing mechanisms on the back end. So the employer needs to decide on the ICHRA vendor. They need to decide how much they're going to contribute to each employee's ICHRA. The employer will then get billed monthly for all of the enrollments. They will then payroll deduct any of the employees' cost share from their paycheck. So the billing mechanism for a group and for an employee works the exact same way a group health plan does, right? You're going to bill the business is the biller and payer. The business is the payer of the group health plan. they deduct any of the employee's cost share through payroll deductions. It's exactly how an ICHRA works, except with the ICHRA, you're going to have, instead of one group health plan, it's going to be 20 different group health plans, and that ICHRA vendor consolidates it all and makes it easy for that employer in one bill. What does it look like for the employee? Well, the employee is going to be told by their employer they're getting this ICHRA benefit. It's awesome. Here's how much money you are going to get towards your benefits. And then with the help of either you or an agency, third party, or URL, you are going to help those employees go into the ICHRA platform and choose which health insurance plan they'd want to enroll in using those ICHRA funds. The plans and rates are their individual plan, off exchange plans and rates, right? So the plans and rates will vary for those employees by county and age. So the benefit there is, in Dauphin County, where URL is located, for example, we're talking about dozens and dozens of health plans and dozens of carriers, right? Over half a dozen carriers. So you're looking at an abundance of options that these employees are going to have access to that might better fit their needs rather than comparatively to a group plan. The business is picking on behalf of that employee, you're picking the network and you're picking the carrier and you're picking the rates and all of those things. And the employee doesn't have as much say in that. It's really a take it or leave it. Even if the business is offering 2 or 3 plans to their employees, that's a drop in the bucket compared to the plans available to employees through an ICHRA, through individual plans. The employee would then just be payroll deducted for whatever cost share they may have. Depending on what the employer contributes, the employee might find a plan that fits their medical needs that costs zero to them because their employer ICHRA contribution covers 100% of it. But if there is cost share applied to an employee, it gets payroll deducted. So an employee is never having to pay an insurance carrier directly for their health insurance premiums through an ICHRA. The business gets billed by the ICHRA vendor. The ICHRA vendor then facilitates that bill to all the different insurance plans that the employees own and pays on their behalf. So benefits to the employer, I probably talked about a lot of these, I'm sorry, but it's the big one. It's going to give employees more customization, right? As opposed to offering group health plans, with one carrier, up to 3 plans, 5 plans at the most, maybe, where depending on what carriers we're looking at. That's nothing compared to what the employee would have available to them through an ICHRA. It's going to be very dependent on where that employee lives. You might have employees of a business that are in very rural areas that don't have a ton of carriers or options available, but whatever carriers are participating in that state or that county, those employees would have access to through the ICHRA. For the employer, it gives the budget control, right? Every year we're working through January 1 renewals now, and 60 to 90 days out, we're getting those renewals and we're keeping our fingers crossed that we're not delivering 50% increases to all of our groups. And, it's always unknown to a certain extent how much of a renewal your groups are going to be getting hit with year after year. And the rates tend to not go down, right? Every year the rates are increasing. This gives very predictable budget control because at the end of the day, the business, the employer is they're selecting a flat dollar amount or a percentage, just like they would with a group plan, that they're contributing to the employee's benefit package every year. What the employees do with that money from there is totally up to them. That budget that the employer has to earmark doesn't affect what the plans or network looks like that the employee chooses. It is up to the employee at that point to decide, all right, my employer is giving me $500 or 50% of my premium for a silver plan. Do I want a silver plan and pay a little bit of money? Or maybe do I want to buy up to a platinum plan and pay more money? Or do I want to look for the cheapest plan available and hope that my employer covers all of it and hope that I'm healthy? we are giving the employees a ton of options and more skin in the game to decide what their healthcare looks like. The employer is only providing them a financial stipend. So at renewal, instead of having to wait for the renewal on the group plan and calculate the percentage increase and quote all these different carriers and then meet with the group and then do open enrollment presentations, it's a very drawn out process with group health plans. But with an ICHRA, it really comes down to, okay, employer, you were contributing $500 this past year towards employees' ICHRAs, or 50% towards the silver plan, or 100% of the gold plan. Do you want to still do that? Or do you want to, cover more this year given trend in increases on the off exchange plans? It's a very predictable budget. There's no participation requirements. So for all those groups out there that have, 50 or 100 employees and only 3 of them want the plan, ICHRAs are great because there's no participation requirements like there are for group health plans. The employer can, but you're not pre-funding the accounts. You're not going into the ICHRA account $500 every month, and then the billing gets processed on the back end. That bill happens, that money sits there, and it's not pre-funded. There's 11 different classes of employees that you can class out compliantly with an ICHRA. Classing in general with group health plans is typically like a big no-no, taboo on the group health side of things. 11 different classes you'll be able to class out employees on with an ICHRA, such as salary versus hourly. Or I have a slide here. I'll get to that in a couple minutes. But tax advantages, same on the ICHRA side as they are on the group side. So business can write off the business expense for any ICHRA contributions they are making towards employees' health plans. On the flip side of things, employees are going to take advantage of the tax benefits. This is going to lessen the employer's payroll taxes, so they'll pay less on their FICA and FUTA taxes as well by offering an ICHRA. Benefits to the employees, I talked about it. There's more options, right? We're talking about in Dauphin County, you have Capital, you have Highmark, you have UPMC, you have PA Health and Wellness, you have Geisinger, you have all these different carriers. Someone living in Dauphin County would be able to choose from all those carriers and every single plan that carrier offers off exchange. So we're talking about dozens of plans, like I said before. Typically, if you're an employee of a business and you're offered a group plan, if you move on from that group plan, you can elect COBRA coverage, but you're paying more than 100% of the premium because you're paying for COBRA admin, right? But typically, there's going to be a better solution out there, or maybe another job lined up. With an ICHRA, there's no disruption because these are individually owned policies, because the employee owns the plan and not the business. That employee can keep that plan if and when they move on to a new opportunity or a job change. They would just be paying for 100% of that premium rather than the employer contributing to it. COBRA still does apply. Like I said, it's an ERISA plan. COBRA does apply to ICHRAs, but not often used because of the mechanisms in which COBRA would work. Tax advantage, I talked about the tax advantages. So anything that the employee pays out of pocket or via payroll deductions towards their health insurance premiums, that's a pre-tax benefit, so less taxable income at the end of the year. For all the agents and brokers on the call that think, okay, this sounds great so far, but how am I compensated? To keep it short and sweet, on group, you're paid on a per employee per month basis, typically for small businesses, right? So less than 100 employees, typically going to be paid a per employee per month fee. On individual plans, you're paid per belly button, right? So on a group plan, it doesn't matter if that employee is a single employee or has 12 children, you're only getting paid for that one employee. But when you move to an ICHRA with individual plan, the way the carriers pay commissions is on the belly buttons. So that employee that has a spouse and 2 children, you're going to be getting paid essentially 4 times the compensation on an individual plan through the ICHRA versus on a group plan. And that's kind of what this slide illustrates here, where we had an actual group. This was a restaurant. This was an ALE. It was a restaurant. They had around 20 people enrolled. They were in one of those buckets, going back to the slide I talked about where, how to identify the good opportunities. This was a business that was just getting hammered with renewal. Their renewal increases year after year. And every year the agent would take it to market, look at self-funded options, level funded options, group options. And there wasn't any options out there that were reasonable for them to continue. So they moved to the ICHRA, and it became much more lucrative for that agent in moving them to the ICHRA. That agent remained BOR. They do a lot. They still are heavily involved in that group's administration of the ICHRA, but it became a lot more worth their time in terms of compensation. I mentioned the classes. So these are the different classes you can do to compliantly class out an ICHRA class. So remember, I said we can offer a group health plan alongside an ICHRA. You could carve out part-time employees and offer them an ICHRA and still offer a group health plan to your full-timers. Or maybe we will only want to offer a group health plan to our salaried employees and carve out our non-salaried employees with the ICHRA. These are the 11 different classes you're allowed to do. I would say the most popular one we tend to see is the geographic locations, right? Because these are individual plans, and where that employee lives depends on what plans, products, premiums look like for them. And so maybe we want to carve out a certain geographic location that has an abundance of ICHRA options available, where some states ICHRAs make a lot of sense because the individual rates and plans are so great. And in other states, they're kind of lacking, and maybe the group plan makes more sense. Considerations. So there's a lot of considerations to take into account when we're talking about an ICHRA. The first one is choosing the vendor, right? It's like whack-a-mole out there right now. There's seems to be a different vendor popping up every day. We're seeing M&A in that space already, where some small vendors gaining traction in membership get acquired by larger ICHRA vendors. A lot of private equity money getting dumped into this space. So people are identifying ICHRA as a long-term strategy. There's been legislation that has gone into effect in some states, like Indiana, for example, where they are incentivizing through tax credits businesses to offer ICHRAs to their employees. There's also bills out there in different states, not put into legislation yet, but bills suggesting tax credits for small businesses or businesses of all sizes that would offer ICHRAs within their state. So continuing to gain traction, but there's a ton of options out there. You got to decide or lean on URL to help you aggregate all the different ICHRA vendors and options out there. The big thing I would say to take into consideration, and I'm always, like I said, insurance nerd here, self-proclaimed. I'm happy to have a conversation about ICHRA vendors with you at any time, the good, the bad, and the ugly. URL's ICHRA agnostic at this point. We are not contractually obligated to place any business with any certain vendor. We are remaining agnostic because my belief is there's not one vendor out there right now that has it figured out entirely for every single group. It's going to depend on each specific group's situation on what may be the best option for that group in terms of the vendor, and quite frankly, for the broker as well. You're going to see some ICHRA vendors out there. A big thing in that space is, does the ICHRA vendor allow the broker to remain BOR or not? There's some vendors out there that will retain BOR and allow the broker to build in consulting fees, but that ICHRA vendor is the broker of record with the insurance carriers. So they get paid comp in addition to any fees they charge the group by the carrier's commissions, and then they let the agent or broker that's bringing that group to that ICHRA vendor to collect the consulting fees in lieu of broker of record commissions. So that's a big piece. It might be a deal breaker for some agents to not be BOR, and rightfully so. With the M&A you see, you don't want to be placing business with one ICHRA vendor, not remaining BOR, and have that ICHRA vendor then get acquired by a larger one that you might not be a fan of, quite frankly. So there's a lot of things to take into consideration there. It's not a deal breaker if you're not BOR, in my opinion, but it's something to be very mindful of. ICHRA fees. I mean, the fees are all over the place. Some ICHRA vendors are just going to outprice small businesses. Their fees and their technology and their solution in the ICHRA space will not be cost effective for a 5-person business or a 4-person pizza shop. There's vendors out there that have extremely low fees, but I'll say that may come at a cost, right? That may require the broker as BOR to be much more involved in the administration. The compliance, right? Some ICHRA vendors, it was scary when we were first scouring the market going back years ago now, that just the vendors that were offering ICHRA solutions that just didn't even have a pulse on the compliance, the regulatory requirements, everything that goes into offering an ICHRA compliantly that the ICHRA vendors just were not aware of. So be mindful, lean on URL and myself to help you kind of work through, navigate that. A lot of vendors out there will offer compliance solutions, sometimes at a fee, sometimes bundled inside their other fees. But we're here to help you kind of like work through that and navigate that. It's always going to come down to our group rates more competitive, right? Like if we're coming from a group background, what exactly, which way do we want to steer our clients? Do we want to be steering them towards group because that makes the most sense? Or do we want to be steering them towards an ICHRA? I will say this, if you are a group health agent and you are not presenting ICHRA as an option, at the very least, you're vulnerable or susceptible to losing that group to another agent that's going to present an ICHRA option out there. We've seen, especially this past year, many agents we work with have success in winning BOR business on the group plan just because they went in there and showed that group an ICHRA. They didn't even move them to an ICHRA. They showed it as an option, showed that group that they're knowledgeable and an expert in that field if and when they need to make that move. But for now, they BOR the group business and won that account without even moving them to an ICHRA. The timeline, right? Individual health plans run on calendar year. So any group that you are quoting outside of January 1, the first year, they will have a short plan year, right? So if you have a December 1st group renewal, that group would essentially have to renew group 12/1-1/1 or move to an ICHRA 12/1-1/1 and then re-enroll in the ICHRA 1/1. Because again, ICHRA, they're individual plans. Individual plans run on calendar year January 1. So timeline can be a thing, right? And the employee education, it really comes down to the messaging with the employees. There's crazy stats out there. You can use ChatGPT or Google and look up the persistency and satisfaction rates among ICHRAs or businesses that have moved to ICHRAs and the employee satisfaction. I'm always, I would say, shocked but pleasantly surprised at the success in which the statistics reflect ICHRA businesses moving to ICHRAs, not just for the business, but for the employees as well. So super interesting. Employee education, that's a very important. How involved are you going to be in the ICHRA administration? Are you going to help? If you have a 20-person group, you're doing maybe one group presentation, virtual, maybe in person. With an ICHRA, you could potentially be doing 20 individual one-on-one enrollments because you need to find and enroll 20 different plans for 20 different employees rather than 1, 2, or 3 plans that you're offering all those employees on a group chassis, right? So how do we help? We're an aggregator. It's whack-a-mole out there with these ICHRA vendors. We're staying agnostic. We're not obligated by any contracts to be pushing business one way or another. So we quote, we analyze, and then we will provide recommendations when you send us your quote requests on potential ICHRA clients for your business. I'll probably ask to have a conversation if we're not already running those analysis for you on what you're really looking for and how involved you want to be in the process. Do you want to be a little more hands off? Have URL handle the admin and day-to-day maintenance of this? Be hands-on when any issues pop up, and just collect some consulting fees, be the face of the group? Or do you want to be BOR? Do you want to do all the enrollments? Do you want to be an expert in the field? We help agents in both of those scenarios and probably some in between as well. And I just normally want to have a conversation up front when we get the first quote request on what your preferences are, how your agency operates, what markets you specialize in, and where you see yourself going in this ICHRA space. It might be that we help you and are a little more hands-on in your first couple ICHRA groups until you get your feet under you, and then you kind of take the lion's share of that administration moving forward with the other opportunities that you have. We do a lot of enrollment assistance. It's that time of year, right? Almost that time of year for the open enrollment for the individual plans to get any current ICHRA groups re-enrolled. We will help with enrollment assistance to get your groups set up and then at renewal as well. So just like we are a general agency for ACA products, individual products, and group as well, you can consider us a general agency and a marketing organization to help you grow and retain your business for ICHRAs as well. I'm looking at this slide here, and it could probably use a little updating. This is just a snapshot, I'll say, of the ICHRA vendors that we currently work with. There are others either we've had a long-standing relationship with, or like I said, due to the whack-a-mole scenario where they keep popping up, maybe newer relationships that have formed recently with new vendors coming to the market. So quoting, what's going to be needed, think of it very similar to a group health quote. With the group health quotes, I'm going to start another poll here. With the group health quotes, you're going to need a member level census. If it's an ALE or applicable large employer, we're going to want salaries so that we can determine affordability. We're going to have to benchmark affordability. And to do that, we need employee salaries. But technically, if it's a small business, less than 51 employees, non-ALE, technically don't need salaries. I know you'll get some pushback probably. Thank you for completing the polls. I'm just trying to get these started out here. Salaries come into play, but for small businesses, technically not required. You may have gotten pushback in the past on that for small, ICHRA quotes, but technically not the case. And then we always want to do current benefit strategy. Some of these ICHRA vendors, we have a quoting tool where we can quote the ICHRA and get super creative. There's a lot, there's a million ways to cut a pie. There's a million ways to build an ICHRA strategy. Some of the vendors let us quote within their quoting engine or a quoting tool. Others you have to send out for RFP. We're typically going to look at the group, determine how you as the agent want to approach the opportunity, and then send it out to market just like we would if we were sending your group health renewal out to market. But they want to see current and renewal rates so that we can back into any potential cost savings and actually calculate that in the ICHRA renewal. If it's a virgin group, that's fine. No current coverage. We just have nothing really to show them what cost savings would look like because there's no current plan in place to save cost on. And then the fees or comp structure. Do you want to be BOR? Do you not care about being BOR? Is URL doing enrollments for you? What do you want to charge the group in fees, if anything? we'd want to know that ahead of time just so that we could include that and calculate that into the proposal. All right, so a little over a half an hour. That was pretty good for me and my long-winded approach to things. Hopefully everyone stuck through. Yeah, we still got a bunch on. That's awesome. I'll open it up now for any questions since we definitely have some time. Looks like we did have a time. All right, so we got, does the employee have to use the ICHRA platform or can they pay for coverage themselves and submit it for reimbursement? They do not have to use the ICHRA platform. They could submit for reimbursement. I would say in the example of an employee that is enrolled in Medicare. So a over 65 employees still working, they would have to enroll in Medicare. They're not eligible for an under 65 product, right? Because they're over 65. With Medicare, that is how it works. They will pay for coverage and then they would submit for reimbursement. Under 65, I can't think of a reason in which an employee would not want to use the ICHRA, why they'd want a manual reimbursement over not having to pay out of pocket full cost up front. Yeah, so an eligible employee is typically going to be required to use the ICHRA platform because the ICHRA platform is where all of the employer contributions are calculated into things. If they were not using the ICHRA platform, the alternative would be enrolling with the carrier directly, getting billed full cost, and then submitting for reimbursement, and that's doesn't necessarily make sense. What is staffing firm? I can follow up on some of these questions. Yes, we have a list of our ICHRA vendors I can make available. That last slide there had a snapshot of quite a few of them. Owners are always a tricky situation with ICHRAs. So essentially, it's going to depend on how the business files their taxes and treats owners on if they're eligible for the ICHRA. Generally speaking, like partnerships, S corps, not going to be eligible for the ICHRA. They still, so our groups that we have plenty of groups that are on an ICHRA that are an S corp. The owners or partners can still use the ICHRA platform to enroll in a plan and to shop plans. They're just not technically eligible for the ICHRA reimbursement. All right. Who is responsible to verify or approve the proper utilization of the ICHRA money? Well, the only way the employee, it's going to depend on the ICHRA vendor on how the employee can allocate the ICHRA money, but it's all going to be based off of the products and carriers available on that ICHRA vendor. So, and that product or carrier will depend on the employee's home zip code where they reside. So they're going to be verifying based off of enrolling with each carrier who the proper utilization of the ICHRA money. Hopefully I explained that okay. How would you recommend the employer contribute? After the employer contribution is set, what platform do you use to enroll the employee? That's a great question. So the contributions we've seen it a lot of different ways. We're gonna see a flat dollar amount. You're typically going to see a percentage amount, or you can see age banded. You can also do age banded contributions. Those can remain equitable because if you're moving from, let's just say you're moving from a level funded group plan to an ICHRA where they're individual plans, those individual plans are age-based, community rated, right? So those rates will vary by employee's age when you move to an ICHRA. And so a percentage rather than flat dollar and age banding tend to be the most popular. And then what platform would you use to enroll the employee? You use whatever ICHRA platform or ICHRA vendor you would decide to partner with for that group. They, like I said, they all do the funding mechanisms on the back end. Most do some form of compliance, and then they offer the technology and the enrollment platform on the front end. That's what you use for employees to enroll, because that platform will calculate the ICHRA contributions and show employees what their actual cost share of premium would look like. Can an employer get access to the ICHRA program anytime during the year? Yes, you can start an ICHRA first of the month, any month, at inception. I mentioned on a slide earlier, though, these plans run on calendar year. So let's just say you had a group that you wanted to move to an ICHRA in July. You can enroll that group and all their employees effective July 1st with their benefits, but they would have their next open enrollment for January 1 of the following year. So that first year that you start an ICHRA or move a group to an ICHRA, it's going to be essentially a short plan year the first year, because it runs on calendar year. And then once they get set on calendar year after that first year, it just runs on calendar year every year after. Great question. Take Command. Yes, love Take Command. Love Jack. Great people over there. We use Take Command. Take Command's a popular vendor for sure. Work with them, like them. Can a business have multiple ICHRAs for multiple classes of employees? So you would essentially have one ICHRA, but you can have different contribution strategies within different classes. And so I'll repeat that. The question was, can a business have multiple ICHRAs for multiple classes of employees? And the way I answered that was, you would have one ICHRA, but within those multiple classes, you can have different contribution strategies. So it would kind of work like multiple ICHRAs, which is what I think this person is actually asking. All right, let me see. A lot of questions. That was good stuff. Polls. All right. We got all the polls answered. Thank you so much. Looks like we got a good mix of agents writing ACA and group. So I love to see that. A lot currently selling ACA stuff. Love to see that. So it looks like a lot of our attendees are very comfortable selling in those markets, and just maybe not super comfortable with ICHRAs as a whole. And that's what URL's here for. So I'm glad you took the time out of your busy schedule to hop on the call to learn a little bit. Really look forward to engaging with some of you. The best way to learn, right, is to just send over an opportunity. If you have an ugly group health renewal and you're feeling desperate for options, send it our way. Ask us to help you run some ICHRA analysis. And the worst thing that could happen is we say, yeah, sorry, you're stuck with that ugly group renewal. ICHRA doesn't appear to be the best strategy for them moving forward. And that'll be a great way for you to maybe, get your feet wet and get a little bit more comfortable with the concepts and all the different moving parts when moving with an ICHRA. But it's a great fit for some. It's not a great fit for all. These ICHRA vendors, going back to the good, the bad, and the ugly, I mean, if there's issues, it tends to be around billing. There's deadlines are different with individual plans and carriers and policies versus group. So it's really training your mind and the group's mind to switch their thinking cap from group to individual. So it's not about if things go wrong with an ICHRA, it's when things go wrong, and do you have the right trading partners in place to help you work through those issues. It won't be all rainbows and butterflies, but having a good ICHRA vendor behind you, not just with the technology, but with the support, honestly, it's very, very important. And having that extra layer of support with URL, having us behind the scenes as that expert and kind of take a lot of the heavy lifting off of your plate, depending on how you want to set up the ICHRA, it can really be a win-win-win for the group, the agent, URL, everyone as a whole. So don't shy away from it. Don't bury your head in the sand, because there's agents we have seen lose their clients to other agents presenting ICHRAs because that agent didn't want to didn't want to face the truth that the ICHRAs aren't going away anytime soon. It doesn't seem. So it looks like that concludes our presentation. Thank you for all the questions. If we get any more questions that came in, I will address those one-on-one with the person that asked the question. Great attendance on the webinar today. Super happy for everyone to take their time. My contact information is up there on the slide. So really appreciate your business if you're doing it with us already. And I would welcome the opportunity to do more business with you if we're not already. So appreciate you. Take care. I'm thinking of you during this crazy insurance season, and hope we all make it out on the other side. Thank you.